All right. Well, thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. The title of my talk is Calderon's Life is a Dream, The Personal is Political, and the Role of Choice in Society. I've done several of these over the years, faculty lectures. The things that change are two, the topics and the size of the font on my notes continually gets bigger and bigger. I'm presenting, as Jess said, this lecture in conjunction with our upcoming production of Life is a Dream, or La Vida es Sueño, by Calderon de la Barca, and adapted by Cuban-American playwright Nilo Cruz. How many of you, besides those in my show, how many of you are familiar with this play? Have you ever heard of it? George, good. Have read it? Has anybody seen it before?
I have a ticket for the first night.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. It is a play that is often studied, hopefully, in theater history courses. It is a play that is not often produced, but partly because if you were doing the original version, it would be a multi-hour epic. And one of the reasons I chose Nilo Cruz's version of it, it is a crisp 90 minutes, and it captures the main essential points of the production. This is a work that I've taught for nearly 20 years, and it's long considered to be one of the great dramas in the canon, and it has, on a personal level, become one of my most favorite works. I always enjoy teaching it when I get the chance. And for years, I've said, I need to direct this work. I want to direct this work. And over the years, George can attest to this, there are any number of reasons why faculty choose a show to direct. A lot of it has to do with things that we need in our season, what's best for our students, or who has the holiday show, right? And I never could quite find the time. And this year, last spring, when we were deciding on the season, I came back to this play, and for reasons I'll talk about later in my discussion, it felt very relevant to be doing this play at this time. And so it's now on our season, and we've been in rehearsals for multiple weeks, and we open a week from tomorrow. We will open on Friday, the 28th. Thank you. So, written 388 years ago, I believe it's extremely relevant to society today. We'll talk about that, but first I want to give a little bit of background into our playwright to give him some credit. So Calderon de la Barca, 1600 to 1681. So lived a good long life and a really kind of interesting life. He is ranked along with Lope de Vega as one of the two great Spanish playwrights from the golden age of Spanish theater. He was born to low nobility, which I'm assuming that's kind of probably middle class or maybe lower upper middle class. And I want to make sure my great poster, if we can get it back up, Jess, if you'll help me do that, by Joaquin Rodriguez is shown during this. And so he was born into low nobility, educated in Jesuit schools, and studied at the university level as he prepared ultimately to enter into the priesthood. But at the age of 23, he changes his mind about taking religious vows, and instead he turns to the theater. Now, if I had $1 for every student who'd had that same story, I would have $0. But that's his story. So at age 23, he joins the theater and he begins to write, and he is quite prolific. He writes over 400 plays. We have about 200 of them still in existence, with La Vida es Sueño, his most famous and most produced work, kind of his signature work. After a career in the theater, he also is a soldier, and he eventually does join the priesthood and fulfills that part of his life as he becomes a Roman Catholic priest. A little bit about the play, so you know what we're talking about and what we're getting into here. So at heart, this play is an age-old story, as you can tell by Joaquin's poster, about royalty, ultimately about succession to the throne, as well as a tale about thwarted love and tarnished honor. In each case, the central characters are trying to avenge a wrong done to them and fight to have their rightful place in the world. That's kind of at the core of this play. There are two major characters, the male character and the female lead character. Each has suffered wrongs, and each is on the scene, ready to claim what they view as their rightful place in the world. Now, the central action focuses on Prince Sigismundo. As an infant, he was locked away at birth, foreboding astrological signs that his father, the king, reads, because remember, in the age of the Renaissance, the study of knowledge and the stars and was dictating the choices he made. And he sees the stars, reads the prophecies about his son, coupled with the fact that during childbirth of the prince, his wife, the queen, dies. So he takes these as bad omens, and he reads the stars to say that when this young boy grows up to be king, he will act as a tyrant. So the king makes a decision. He decides we can't let that happen. So we're going to lock him away from birth for the rest of his life, having one person that he sees his entire existence, his jailer, his teacher, who gives him an education, but he has no interaction. His father never visits. He has no interaction with people. So along the way, the king, Sigismundo now is in his maybe early 20s. The king is feeling some guilt. You think, right? So he's feeling some guilt, and he's wondering, did I make the right call? Did I do the right thing 20 years earlier? So he comes up with a plan. He devises a plan in which he will test Sigismundo. Whether is his future predestined by the stars, or can Sigismundo do his own thing and become his own person? So the basic plot is, for one day, they're going to take this son out of prison and tell him they're going to drug him, get him out of the prison, bring him to the throne and tell him he is now king, and pretend as if he has been king all this time. And they want to see how he acts. Does he act as a tyrant, as the stars foretold, or does he act as a benevolent leader? And the plan is this, kind of leading to the title, Life is a Dream, one of the ways at least, is that if he does well, they will tell him those 20 years in prison was all a dream. You've been here this whole time. You've just had this extended, terrible, bad dream. If he is a tyrant and a beast on the throne, they will tell him, after they put him back in prison, that his day on the throne was just a dream. You've never left your cell, okay? So that's one part of the story. The other part follows, and so the trajectory of the story ultimately is his journey from prisoner to ruler to his hope-for rebirth as an honorable leader. The subplot focuses on a character named Rosara and her quest to reclaim her honor after she has been seduced and then abandoned by the Duke Astolfo. So she travels to the kingdom in which Sigismundo is imprisoned, and she's in search of Astolfo with plans to kill him. So yes, there very much is a bit of a soap opera feel to all of this. There's a lot of action adventure, and ultimately the two plots converge as Rosara encounters the imprisoned Sigismundo. As the action progresses, she tries to help him understand that through the exercise of his free will, choice, if you will, he can free himself from this destiny that was imposed upon him. So as the action plays out, we will discover if Rosara gets her revenge and if Sigismundo learns that he can determine and shape his own future. So Life is a Dream is an example of Spanish comedia. Not Commedia dell'arte, but comedia. And there are some characteristics of this very popular form from the golden age of Spanish theater. And I'll just run through the basic things with these. So they're always written in a 3-act structure. The first act is when the issues or ideas are introduced. The second act is when they're developed. And in the third, the resolution comes. In our play, it is in 3 parts. but without intermission because we've condensed the play. Our playwright has condensed the play, so we don't need full 3 acts, but it is in a 3-part structure. The comedias were written in verse. Our adaptation is poetic, but it's in prose. These plays focused on dynamic plots rather than on character development. So these characters are not the most complex written characters, but I will say they express fairly complex ideas, philosophical ideas, if you will. But in terms of, they are 3-dimensional, but they're not anything like maybe what we're used to in the age of realism. They're fairly 2-dimensional, let's say 3-dimensional characters. But the focus is really on plot and action over character development. There are often prevailing themes, and in this case, love and honor is one that underlies the action. And what makes these plays exciting is that there is intrigue, disguise, sword fights, battles, exotic locales. So, Spanish writer, 1635, what exotic locale is he going to set this play in? You guys can't answer. What do you think? Poland. The exotic locale of Poland with characters coming from Russia, right? Our production, it is a faraway place in the ambiguous present. We're not setting it in Poland, but so exotic locales. And there's also a mixture of dramatic and comedic plot lines. While teaching this in classes, it is a play which almost always students are unfamiliar. But after we get into our study of it, ultimately, and sometimes surprisingly to me, my students love this play. I think part of it is the mix of the philosophy that's presented in the play, the big ideas, combined with moments like when Segismundo on the throne gets mad at people and grabs them and tosses them out the tower window into the ocean below because they pissed him off. So there's all kinds of stuff happening in the play. But its focus is really on major thematic issues that make Life as a Dream an important play. Really a philosophical allegory or fable. So these are philosophical allegories or works that have moral lessons, political ideologies, humanistic values, spiritual messages. In other words, this play has something to say amidst all of the action that happens in it. So that really gets to why I'm here tonight to talk about the play, besides to promote it, which is to talk about why this play is relevant today. So featuring an epic story, action, adventure. Like I said, our contemporary production is a full-length play that mixes the past with the present. It's going to feature stage fights choreographed by former visiting ASU professor Alexis Black, who is a professor now at Michigan State University. And she most recently, because part of what she does is stage combat or stage fight choreography, she just finished a year ago, less than a year ago, helping to stage the fighting in Shakespeare's Scottish play. I won't say the full title because in the theater world, we don't say the M word for that play. But on Broadway with Daniel Craig, films James Bond, right? So she came back a couple of weeks ago, partly as a favor to us and wanting to come back and visit the Valley. And so she has choreographed she's choreographed all the fights, and they're really, really very exciting. My colleague Gene Schilling from Art has designed the set, and also Assistant Professor Angela Winter has provided recordings of much of the music we're using in the production. So even with all the play's action, when it is taught, the focus is most often on Calderon's use of language and the ideas he explores in it. It's often said that this play is the Spanish version, in some ways, of Shakespeare's Hamlet. Mainly that comparison is made because of the philosophical nature of the works. They really are talking about big ideas and trying to figure out, man's place in the world, human's place in the world, and also probably because of its importance in culture, particularly Spanish culture. I often tell my students, well, maybe we've got it reversed. Maybe we should be saying Shakespeare's Hamlet is the English equivalent of Life is a Dream. Because in my mind, I actually prefer this play over Hamlet. At the core of the work are some basic thematic binary oppositions, which I think gets to the real heart of what the play is about. So in our language, words and concepts are often set up as opposites, usually with one favored and seen more favorably than the other. One part of the binary is privileged, which is favored, which is favored. If you have two words, two concepts that are completely set up as they're just binary oppositions, typically based on societal, individual ideologies, one word, one concept, one identity is seen as more favorable. It is privileged. It is seen as what is preferred. So, for example, in the following binary oppositions, and these are really simple ones, which one in your mind is favored? Which is viewed more positively than its opposite? So we take two opposite concepts, up and down, okay? So in your minds, both are fine words, both are good, but which is seen more positively? Up. Why? Because you want to be up. You don't want to be down, right? We want to be going up in the direction. We don't want to be going. Rich and poor. Rich, right? American success story. You'd rather be rich than poor. Strong and weak. Yeah. So binary oppositions, we create divisions and create words which are opposite, and then we enforce that by making them one more positive, one privileged. So one of the cool things that Calderon does in his play is to take some well-established binary oppositions and explore the moments of aporia, by what we've read, seen, experienced. It's a moment of contradiction. I argue, and one of the things that I love about theater is that I think all of theater has the opportunity for moments of aporia for us as artists and for our audience. So what I mean by that is our audience comes in, they buy a ticket, they have their seat, they go into the theater, they take their seat, the lights go down, the lights come up, and they watch a story play out in front of them. Within that event are moments of possibility for transformation. This is what happens, and it doesn't happen always. The audience has to be open to that moment. But an audience comes in, they know who they are, they know what they believe, they've had a life of experiences, but they're afforded the opportunity to sit in an audience, watch a play out in front of them, and see characters with whom they may have nothing in common. They may not even like the characters that they see or what they stand for or what they represent or who they are, but if they're open to it, as they go on this journey with the characters, they can see the world differently. They have a chance to see the world through somebody else's eyes, to walk in their shoes, so to speak. And maybe, at the end of the evening's performance, they are a little bit different because the world has become wider for them. It's a moment of aporia when what you knew once to be true, you have to reconcile because you witnessed something that says what you thought was once true is no longer true. Let me give you an example that will stand with me forever. So 21 years ago, I directed my first production in our new theater building, the Laramie Project. And it was the first project I did on our campus. And the opening night, we had a sold-out audience. We were doing a walk standing against hatred, post-show, candlelight vigil, walking across campus. Before we got there, though, we did an audience talkback. And, typically you do a talkback, you're hopeful that if, 15, 20 people might stay, like 80% of the audience stayed for that. And in the audience was one of the parents, a father of one of the cast members in the show. The young woman in our show, a senior theater major getting ready to graduate in a few weeks after the production closed, a week after the production closed, had not yet come out to her family. And so if you know the Laramie Project, it's about Matthew Shepard and his murder in Wyoming. So during the talkback, the father availed himself of the opportunity to express his opinions and his ideas. Clearly in his mind, he had a binary opposition set up between gay and straight, with straight very much favored. And the things that he was saying from the audience were painful for many to hear, especially for his daughter. But as challenging as that moment was, it became a moment of opportunity because he heard many different opinions, right? He saw a story play out in front of him. And it opened a moment between daughter and father, not that evening, but shortly after that, where she could no longer stand and without telling him who she was. And it opened a conversation between them that within a couple of years, he was walking her down the aisle as she married her partner in New Mexico after she had graduated from here and moved away. It's a moment of aporia where we have to reconcile what we once thought with what we now know. So, from a literary perspective, from a literary analysis perspective, part of what I want to do is explore the ideas of the binary oppositions in this play and when there are moments of aporia, when they fall apart, when these opposites that we set up so strongly, particularly in Western culture, good and bad, male and female, gay and straight, right? We have all of these oppositions which help us to organize and understand the world, but these oppositions mostly are false oppositions. And so let's look at some of the binary oppositions and some of the themes in this play. On a philosophical level, one of the big ones the play asks and looks at is our existence real? Or are we just dreaming it? So the play gets pretty heady in expressing these ideas about, what is real, what is dreams, what is illusion, what is reality. And of course, this theme fits nicely with the age of the Renaissance, in which humans are questioning the role of humans in the universe. So, in setting up the opposites of reality versus illusion, critic Neil Himes argues that reality, as it's constructed in the world of this play, is not fixed or certain. Okay? So, for the characters and for the audience, what they see, or rather what they think they see, is often not what is. It's often not what is. The world of the play is designed to be ambiguous. It is designed to be surreal. So if this is true, that the characters face the problem of how to be sure of anything, it leads to a conclusion that perception, what we perceive, can often lead to deception until one acts using reason. So let me give you some examples from the play of this, where what we think might be real may not be so real. So we first encounter Prince Segismundo in his jail cell. He is in prison. He appears as this wild man, moaning and yelling, but yet when he first talks, he is an educated person. Appearances are not as they seem, because it turns out that our wild man is actually a prince, right? In the first act, our female lead, Rosara embodies the masculine. She's coming on this journey to find Astolfo and to kill him. A dangerous journey, so she dresses as a man, and the appearance is she's coming as a man, and that's how she is in the first act. In the second act, because of plot changes, she now appears as a female character. And in the third, as she goes into battle, not only for herself, but in aid of Prince Segismundo, she appears as both masculine and feminine. And she has one of the great soliloquies speeches I think, in theater in which she talks about this, how she first appears masculine, secondly feminine, and then third as a mix of both. So two ways. Segismundo is not who he seems to be for the other characters and for us as the audience. Rosaura, she's changing identities. So what is real? What is not? What is illusion? And then finally, the whole plot of making Segismundo believe that he is dreaming events that have occurred results in that character always questioning what is real, what is dream. What is a dream, what is real? Because he's standing on unstable ground. Is it real life or is it just a dream? Critic Himes concludes that the resolution of the problem is actually the unification of these opposites. We don't need to do illusion and reality, but instead, reality being a matter of perception itself is a dream. So the opposites fall apart and they become connected. Another, as I was talking about with Rosaura, the masculine and feminine is explored in this play. So Rosaura is an agent of change, really just kind of a kick-ass female character for the 1630s. She is bold, she is determined, she is strong, she refuses to be victimized, she is standing her ground in order to claim her rightful place in the world. But she finds herself surrounded by powerful men who will use their status and even their physicality to take advantage of her, to try to take advantage of her. And in an act of defiance, she seeks vengeance against those who break their promises, as well as attempt to attack or assault her. In her quest for justice, she challenges the perceptions of the other characters and the audience by defying traditional notions of gender. Dr. Carrie Barkley, dramaturg, explains, in today's queer lexicon, Rosaura is genderful. She dives into masculine attire and presentation, by the middle takes on the feminine, and in the end doesn't feel the need to choose. She can be masculine and feminine at the same time. 1635 and the rest of Europe would have had a greater or a starker gender binary, but in any context, people find ways to survive and push boundaries beyond the conventional. So it's a moment of aporia, a moment of contradiction, when old ways of thinking dissolve, and it occurs with the opposition between the binary opposition between feminine and masculine, female and male. In the place of strict gender definitions, a new genderful reality exists, which acknowledges that one's full spectrum self is unique to the individual, free from gender stereotypes. Calling into question the strict binary opposition of female and male literally makes Rosaura as a character a living, breathing aporia. So additionally, the play goes on to look at other issues, including the role of free will versus destiny. Are these two complete opposites, or are they somehow connected? Is there a third aspect to this? So Life as a Dream confronts the issue of whether the trajectory of our life stories is predetermined and fixed by the stars or by destiny, or can individuals actually affect and even alter what appears to be their fate? Is our protagonist a monster because it is his nature, or is he the way that he is because of the way that people have treated him? So again, it makes it more complicated. It's not a two thing. It's not just fate versus free will. We have to look at also the impact of how others deal with us and treat us. What impacts the lives we live? So see our production and find out the answer to the question of, can our protagonist change? Is he more than a monster? Can he determine his own fate? So as I mentioned earlier, checking on time here, this work was written nearly 400 years ago. But I argue that it's really relevant to American society today. in the America we live in now. Not that the production will go strongly in this direction. I think these are issues that audiences may discover as they watch or think about. We're going to present just a good old-fashioned action-adventure story, which there are fights and battles and people trying to claim their place in the world. But I think there is something bigger going on here, which is what spoke to me when I chose to do this play. The concept of individual freedom has always been at the center of the American ethos. It is the idea that as long as we don't negatively impact someone else, we should be free to follow our own dreams and passions. We create our present, we create our own futures. Of course, the belief that each person can control their own life merely through the choices they make, uninhibited by the actions of an outside force, especially the government, is to a large degree myth, even if we pretend it isn't. So today in our contemporary society, the notion, the idea of choice, is very much at the forefront of American society and politics in significant and in urgent ways. Not only as it relates to reproductive rights, but also to the right of an individual to live as their own authentic self. And in a third, where I'll get to by the end of this, is also how we choose to act towards each other. So I see this play not only as great action adventure story, but a work about human rights, as it makes its argument that every individual has the right to define their life on their own terms. With that in mind, I want to briefly focus on the concept of choice in Life is a Dream, which I think manifests itself in several ways. First, the play explores the issue of governmental control over our most basic decisions. While it is the father who imprisons his son, remember the father is the king. The father is the state. By locking up Segismundo, the state has forced upon him an existence, a destiny, if you will, that removes autonomy and personal choice from his life. We live in a period when individual autonomy, in the form of a woman's right to control their own bodies, and in an individual's right to live as their own authentic self, defining who they are and how they present themselves, is threatened by more aggressive, and I would argue more oppressive governmental control through legislation and court rulings. In the play, the king does not attempt to control an individual's reproductive choices or deny a person from asserting their gender identity, but he did use his authority to change the trajectory of his son's life when he imposed his own personal beliefs as the reason to imprison his son for life, thereby denying his son his own autonomy and freedom of choice. The king's actions create unintended and sometimes tragic consequences that impact individual lives as well as the larger society as a whole, as the kingdom faces a revolt because of the king's behavior. This leads to what I see as the heart of the play. Unsure of what is happening to him, is he a prisoner or is he a king? Is this real or is this all just a dream? Segismundo has basic choices about how he's going to act. Will he seek revenge for the wrongs done to him, or will he choose to act justly by doing, in his words, good deeds and treating others with dignity? He has a choice about the kind of man and king he will be. Will he be human or will he be a beast? We live in a time when there seems to be so much conflict. And this is obviously not a new thing, and it can be argued that it's always been this way. But to me, at least, this period feels different. Feels different to me, at least. from politicians on the national stage violating long-held norms of standard behavior, to Karens raging at Walmart, caught and promoted on social media. It seems like civility, and in the language of this play, honor and duty, is in sharp decline. The play offers the very simple truth by arguing that even if life is a dream, even if we are each living our own reality, and this is an event that's only playing out in my mind, and you're my fictional creations, even if that is the reality, or this is all too real, it doesn't do away with the basic idea that what we do and how we act is a matter of choice. There's a lot of things that we cannot control, but in many ways, on a basic level, we can control how we choose to treat each other. We can act with hate and violence towards each other, or love and respect. It's our decision. And in doing so, we can shape our destinies, and we can create a reality worth living in. And that's the end of my talk. Thank you so much for being here. The show runs February, that's been that kind of year. We run April 28th, 29th, May 5th, 6th, and 7th at 7:30, and May 7th with a Sunday matinee at 2 p.m. You may go online if you're interested in seeing the show to theater.adams.edu and buy online tickets as we move to online ticketing this year. We have a few minutes. Are there any questions that you would like to ask?